So let's talk about another very unique feature of the lazy monkey yoga style that is not what you will find in other vinyasa flow styles when it comes to sun salutations and lazy monkey yoga in general. We never do a warrior one pose. Virabhadrasana 1 is a pose that we never practice because it doesn't make sense anatomically. And I don't practice it. I don't teach my students to practice it. We do Virabhadrasana 2, which is Warrior 2, but we set it up in a very specific way. We set it up for success, okay? So what you might see in some yoga practices is they'll do the forward bend, forward fold, they'll step back into a lunge, they'll put down the heel, and then they'll lift up into a Warrior 1. Warrior 1. Warrior 1 is a problematic position for me because when I'm doing my vinyasa sun salutation, my hips are facing forward. My hip bones are like headlights, like I'm driving a car. They're headed straight forward. My hip bones are like headlights on my car, straight forward. When I do my forward fold, and I step back into a lunge, and I come up into what they would call a crescent lunge, I am still squared off. My shoulders and my hips are facing forward, and I am in alignment. This is dragon spreads its wings, okay? That's the alignment. Warrior 1, if you put down the heel, you can automatically see how my hips are no longer in alignment, okay? There's a shifting that happens here. And that is an unnatural movement that if you do over and over and over and over again, it's going to lead to problems with the back. I've been practicing yoga for 20 years. I can tell you that a lot of people who practice yoga for a long time will eventually arrive to where I'm at. I'm someone who's had a lot of injuries in life, not only as a dancer, but also as an aerialist. And studying anatomy and exercise science, there's positions of the body that make sense, and there's positions that people in yoga put the body in that don't make sense. And in lazy monkey yoga, we do what makes sense. We also do what's safe. Okay, so you'll never see a Warrior 1 pose in a lazy monkey class, but we'll talk about it live. So in the lazy monkey yoga style, like I said before, we never jump back and forth between pose, plank, or anything, or downward dog or anything. Very dangerous and not controllable. Now, let me break it down for you really clear about how lazy monkey yoga is different from all other practices that you might run into. Whether it's lazy monkey level 1 sitting on the floor, whether it's flowing through the vinyasa flow, even when it's doing handstands, headstands, arm balancing, and yogic arts, calisthenics. Every single thing that we do is performed with precision and control. Precision and control. That means that we are in control of the movement. It's also a moving meditation. When you're practicing this style of yoga, every single movement that we do is a meditation that you can feel the body moving through space. You can feel the body generating and harnessing universal life force energy when you're doing this practice, okay? But jumping in and out of downward facing dog or into plank or chaturanga or any of that stuff is a highly uncontrolled movement. And it takes a particular kind of adept practicing yoga at a particular level to be able to achieve that safely. I could do that. But even as an adept, I choose not to do that because I don't like it, because it's just too jarring to my body. And in lazy monkey yoga, we don't shock or jolt the body into any particular position, okay? And any practice that does do that, be careful. Be careful, because you will end up hurting yourself in some kind of way, okay? So the lazy monkey yoga vinyasa flow, basically, after we touch down, is we will step back and place the foot into a lunge. This is where you're going to see all the variations in the sequencing. So we drop the knee to the earth. We will do lunge, a crescent lunge, modified crescent lunge. We'll do spinal twists in both directions. We will do regular crescent lunges, and we will transition through that into plank, cat bow, however it is that you choose to transition, okay, to cobra. Now here we go. You ready? Here is your next unique lazy monkey yoga flow transition. The lazy monkey yoga transition that we do out of cobra pose, and like I said, we don't do upward facing dog because it's very jarring to the lower back. Very jarring to the lower back. We'll talk about that more live, okay? From their cobra pose, you will always press back into a child's pose first. From child's pose, you will come back onto all fours, and you will set yourself up to do downward facing dog from a quadruped all four position, okay? Let me explain to you why. Downward facing dog is another one of those positions that yoga instructors will bitch and fight about how it's supposed to be performed eternally. You know, what is and what is not a downward facing dog. Downward facing dog for us is a transition, okay? Whenever I teach the lazy monkey flow, we don't hold downward facing dog. We won't stay there for 10 breaths, not even for 5 breaths. The downward facing dog asana, okay, is a transitional position that takes us from one sequencing to the next, okay? It's a flow, it transitions. I have never liked holding downward facing dog, and this is my yoga style, so I don't have to do it, okay? So that's why the lazy monkey yoga style is my style of yoga. This is how I practice. This is how I have sequenced the movement, and it's my opinion, okay? What you're gonna find out about yoga instructors is everybody's got a goddamn opinion about how you should and should not do everything. That's just fine. Do it however you want. Do what feels good to your body. I'm teaching you what feels good to my body. And if you want to hold downward facing dog, you're more than welcome to, but you don't have to, okay? But let's talk about the alignment in a downward facing dog, okay? You will see people who do either up dog or cobra, and then they will send the hips up and back, and they will roll over the toes to go into a downward facing dog. Or they will tuck the toes and send the hips up into downward facing dog. That is a lot of pressure in the shoulders and the wrist, and it's also very grinding on the spine and the lower back to go from such a big arched position, excuse me, going from such a big arch, tucking the toes and then having to lift get your ass off the ground and in the air, get your ass in the air. That is a lot of weight to be transitioning with the spine from there. That's the part. That's the part that will screw you up every time. This part. Oh, it kills my back. Don't even want to do it. Okay, but people will send themselves back into downward facing dog, and then what happens? Now I'm in this weird position, and you're expecting me to get my heels to the ground, and I've got to change my feet, and I've got to change my hands, and blah, 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 and all these micro adjustments. That is completely avoidable. It's completely avoidable to go through all of that drama to do a downward facing dog that can be perfectly set up from an all fours position, okay? So, I am in all fours. I just did my child's pose. I come back onto all fours, and my hands are placed directly underneath my shoulders, okay? So I am stepped, shoulder to elbow to wrist. My knees are directly underneath my hips, okay? So I have a beautiful right angle here. I'm gonna tuck my toes, and all I have to do is put my butt up in the air and shift my weight back. And I'm in downward facing dog. That's my downward facing dog. Everyone's downward facing dog is gonna look different. You can't expect everyone to look the same in every single posture. And that's a problem in yoga, but it's also a problem in dance. Like if you're a classical ballet dancer or a gymnast, you get it. Because everything is expected to look a particular way. But in reality, like how life really works, downward facing dog looks as different as every single body that walks in the door. So because it's a transitional posture that we use, and it's not something that we hold for a very long time, the easiest way to set it up, anatomically correct, okay? And also, as far as the flow and the movement is concerned, the fluidity of the movement without having to make all kinds of micro adjustments, without having to get to downward facing dog and everything is changing, we go, do it one more time. Such a beautiful flow. I'm going to inhale, I'm going to look up. I'm going to exhale, and I'm going to find child's pose. I'm going to inhale and come onto all fours, making sure that my hands and knees are in alignment. I'm going to tuck my toes and send my hips up. Now from here, I have a lot of options. Well, I can step forward into another lunge, okay? I could step forward into a forward fold, or if I'm dealing with a population that is compromised or elderly or having or disability or even pre and postpartum, I can walk the hands back to meet my feet. And roll up from the base of the spine. Okay, so downward facing dog in a lazy monkey yoga class is going to take you into one of four places. From a downward facing dog, we're either going to transition back into a plank, we're going to step forward into a lunge, we're going to step forward into a forward fold, or we're going to walk the hands back to meet the feet and roll up. And that's going to take us to the next very unique part of the lazy monkey yoga sun salutation flow.